Robert, go ahead and roll it.
The 23rd, 2020. This meeting tonight will limit physical access in the meeting room due to current limitations on public gatherings. Accommodations have been made to assure that the public is able to participate in the meeting. The public may participate in the following ways. Watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the city website. Watch the live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube channels. Call into the teleconference meeting at 1-615-550-8420. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. Limited viewing will be available in the lobby of City Hall to watch the live video. The public may email comments and questions prior to 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting to recorder@franklintn.gov to be read aloud. The city YouTube channel is www.youtube.com/user/City of Franklin. City of Facebook Live is www.facebook.com/City of Franklin. And the City of Franklin website is www.franklintn.gov/Franklin TV. This meeting is officially called to order, and we'll now have a roll call of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Bransford.
Present.
Alderman Speedy.
Present.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Vice Mayor McClendon.
I'm here.
We have full attendance to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen tonight. Item number 1 is consideration resolution 2020-109, a resolution declaring that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen members shall meet on June the 23rd, 2020 for work session and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. I entertain a motion.
Move for approval. Second.
Appropriate motion by Alderman Berger, seconded by Alderman Blanton. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Bransford.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman Berger.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor McClendon.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We'll now go to citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. Does anyone want to speak to this body tonight? Is anyone on the phone, Mr. Stuckey?
We've opened the phone lines for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any citizens online? No one on the line, Mr. Mayor.
We'll move forward then on item number 2, which is discussion of the Cool Springs East Jordan Branch Restoration Project.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take a quick comment and hand it off to our engineering staff, and I believe we also have citizens who might want to speak to this. And was is referred back to the Capital Investment Committee.
Eric, are you speaking? I can't hear you.
Paul, will you continue for him? He's having.
Yeah, I can jump right in. So this item went to the Capital Investment Committee meeting and was referred to this work session agenda for further discussion. And I believe Mr. Dixon is here representing the HOA today. So this project dates back to 2014 when we did our initial feasibility study. On top of that, this was actually, the project was budgeted in the engineering stormwater budget at one point as a capital project. We attempted to bid this project 3 times, and the biggest problem that we ran into every time was that access to the trees and to the drainage ditch that we're trying to repair wasn't there, and contractors didn't want to bid it because they couldn't access the property to appropriately remove the trees. Eventually, all those capital projects were pulled out of our annual budget and moved to the CIP prioritization process. When that happened, the board voted on priority projects. This project was ranked 24 on the weighted ranking, 29 on the non-weighted ranking, and didn't fall in the funding category. As a reminder, this is a ditch that has many trees in it and has some pretty bad erosion in it. And so at some point we decided to try to take this project on, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful at bidding the project due to limited access, and none of the property owners were willing to give us access to allow the large equipment to go in and access the area. So where it stands right now is it's an unfunded project. The HOA still desires to proceed with it. We've recently received a letter from the HOA saying that they would commit to adding $100,000 to the project. The staff recommendation associated with this is, assuming the board wants to proceed with this capital project, our recommendation is that the tree removal be 100% responsibility of the homeowners association, and that the city would partner in trying to do the grading and the stabilization associated with the channel. In this channel's in between, sandwiched behind 2 residential areas in people's backyards, and would require 100% of the trees to remove within the public utility and drainage easement. So the estimated cost for the tree removal is around $400,000. The HOA did receive 3 quotes for it. 2 out of the 3 quotes meet the scope and the size of the project. The other one is significantly less, but missing a lot of information required. And I wouldn't consider that to be a viable quote at this point. And then the grading and stabilization is estimated to be around $900,000. So the total project cost is about $1.3 million for this project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I believe this is Alderman Berger's ward. Would you like to comment, Alderman Berger?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Well, I just wanted to reiterate what we've said before, that this came before the board quite a while back, and we committed to moving ahead with it. So we got to all the way out to submitting, to going out for bids. And we got to that point. We did all these different steps. We got to that second to the final last point of going out for bids, thinking we'd get bids back that we could bring back and take a good look at the time we had the money in the accounts for stormwater. Because we, as Paul said, we couldn't get those bids. It was very difficult. I think we went out 3 times for them. Then the board moved on, and I understand why so, but in our thinking, we didn't think those funds were actually removed, but they were allotted to other projects. So we're back to square one again. And I would just like to make, I'm sure Mr. Dixon's going to want to speak to this, but I just want to make a few observations, a few points here. Because we got all the way up to that point of going out for bid, and now we're back at square one, I don't know of any other HOA that would be able to partner with us like this. And this is a significant amount of money that they are willing to put into this project. And because we couldn't get someone, a company to do the entire project, which was an extensive project, breaking it up made more sense. And then the tree removal, if that could be done and handled through the HOA up front, that would really be helpful. So this is actually, I believe, after talking to Paul, this is the only way to get this project done. And there's a couple of things that I think we have to remember. If no one's gotten down, I know Ann's been over in that area, but if we've not actually gotten down and walked in those areas, it was about 12 feet to get down to the bottom of the creek. And these huge gigundous root systems with massive trees are hanging there. I know the money is tight. I know things have changed drastically with the city right now, but somehow this project is not going to get any better. And with each storm, we risk it continues to worsen and worsen after each storm. People are losing chunks of their backyard. These huge trees are starting to fall. They've already fallen on a couple of homes. We have safety situation here. We have a deterioration situation here. It's continuously deteriorating, and as I said, with every storm. Having the partnership of an HOA, all these things go together to make this project, I think, something we really need to seriously consider trying to fit into our project list as fast as we can. The other thing is every delay, and we know this for the last 2 to 3 years, the price has just gone up and up and up. So I would think the next 1, 2, 3 years from now, we're going to be looking at double or tripling this price because it won't only be this price for this work. It will be additional work because of the deterioration and the massive trees that will be coming down and falling down. So there'll be additional ramifications for delaying the project. And I know that Mr. Dixon wants to speak to this too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We'll just run down the list of aldermen. Alderman Barnhill, you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I would like to hear Mr. Dixon's comments. It has been a long time since we discussed this, and a lot of changes have come about in the city as far as our revenue collections and what our long-range projections are. So I would love to hear his comments before I have any additional comments to make.
Mayor,
Alderman Martin.
before Mr. Dixon speaks, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Did I read in this, in our packet that the HOA does not have the funds at the present time, that they are seeking grants or something, but they don't have it at the present time? That's one question. And another question is, will the removal of the trees actually fix the problem? And thirdly, are there other areas in the city that are like this one? I mean, is this the one that we really need to concentrate on? Or are there other residential areas that need light fixing?
So I'll let Mr. Dixon speak to the funding, but as I understand it, the HOA's offered $100,000 to the project. I don't know their financial capabilities, so Mr. Dixon would have to address that. As far as the removal of the trees, no, that will not fix the problem. It fixes their concern of the falling trees, but to fix the erosion, we'd actually have to go in there and do some grading and stabilization to correct that. Now, the HOA does have the option just to remove those trees that are in jeopardy of falling instead of taking on the entire project itself. And so, you know, to ultimately fix it, we'd have to remove all the trees and regrade and stabilize the channel itself and then revegetate. Are there other areas in the city that are like this? Yes. Anywhere we abut streams and rivers, you always have these type of erosion problems. This one just happens to be smack in the middle of residents' backyards, and they're vocal about it. But trees, I've historically said, just because they're in a drainage easement or just because they're along a river doesn't mean it's the city's responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure that there's positive flow in the channel and the ditch, and that water is moving in the right direction and not creating flooding problems. And today it's meeting those minimum requirements. But this is a project that the HOA has requested from the city for many, many years. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
While we're waiting on Mr. Dixon, who is, I assume is here, I had a quick question. Has anything changed, Mr. Holzen, as far as residents granting access, which sound like it was one of the major issues?
Not to my knowledge. Mr. Dixon can speak to that, but we don't have legal authority, obviously, to go on private property to do improvements unless we went through a condemnation process in a residential subdivision. I'll say that back in the day, we did approach them as every property owner, and none of them were willing to give us access. They did not want the heavy equipment going across their driveways or working in their backyards for the few months, 6-7 months that it would take to actually complete this project. So to my knowledge, nothing has changed.
Mr. Dixon, go ahead, and I'll give you about 2 to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate your time today. Just to I'll hit some of the high points and then come back and hit the questions. Obviously, this is a problem that's been ongoing now for almost the history of the community. There's some longtime residents who have lived along the Jordan branch who have voiced concern about it for really since they moved into the community initially. It's continued to erode over time, losing trees. Homeowners have watched their property lines diminish as well. I've got one homeowner who said that she put a birdhouse in when she moved in, and it was a good 10, 12 feet away from the edge of the stream bed. And today the birdhouse is gone. So there's been a significant loss of property. Also, the trees obviously falling, that continues to be an ongoing issue. The community is taking action with regards to those trees whenever we see an issue. I actually just got an email yesterday talking about 2 trees that have been leaning up against each other for some time now. And fortunately, they fell into the branch as opposed to falling into the homeowner's home. But again, the homeowners are very concerned about the trees falling. It continues to be a safety concern. I want to say that the city had hired the engineering group, I believe it's CEC, to put together a plan back in the mid 2000s. I'm sorry, probably early 2010s. And they put together that plan. And at the time, when they put that plan together, they had proposed a number of different scenarios, of which we ended up proceeding to community sponsored events or meetings that were sponsored by the city, where we would have town hall meetings about the project. And the engineering group would did a presentation on that project and the proposal. So their proposal to remove the trees and do the dredging of the stream, and then also to refinish it and to plant new trees, new vegetation to prevent further erosion. That's really the long-term solution that's needed to solve this problem. The HOA has obtained a loan. We actually just got approval for that earlier this week. I guess it was yesterday that we got the approval on that. So those funds are en route to us. We should have those in hand, I'd say, within the next week to 2 weeks from now. So we are very committed to seeing this project through. We want this project to go to funding. Obviously, as far as easements go, the HOA is willing to exercise our right to easements between homeowner properties to get needed equipment through. But a number of the contractors that we spoke to all believe that they can do the majority of their work by running equipment up and down the branch from Cliff Run, which is the road that goes over the branch. But again, this is a project that we would want to see funded. It's been an ongoing concern for the community, and it presents quite a bit of liability both for the community and the city. So we'd love for the city to move forward on this project. Again, we do realize that it's tight times right now with the situation that we are all in. but we would love to have this project put on a priority list as soon as possible. Thank you.
Loan you mentioned, is that $100,000? Is that $400,000?
So the loan amount is for approximately about a little more than $100,000.
I'll open it up for the alderman. Mr. Barnhill, I'll go back to you.
I've heard Paul mention $400,000 as far as tree removal is concerned. If I understood correctly, the homeowners association was willing to take that on. But if you've only got $100,000, how would you take on a $400,000 project?
Yes, sir. When we were initially asked about having participation in the project, the initial ask of us was not to take on the full funding of the tree removal. It was just, we were just asked to come up with a proposal on how that we could help to provide some funding for the project. And so that's where, you know, when we went and we reviewed what we have, what we can do, that's where we came up with our $100,000 number. So that's where we came from. I would say that the city, the last time that we had heard that the city wants, or that the engineering department is recommending us to pay the full amount of the tree removal, that was at the last CIC meeting that we first heard that.
Well, I think what they're recommending is that you remove the trees and we'll do the stabilization. So if I've understood correctly and followed what we've just got through saying on this right here, you remove the trees. We're not able to get in and out. There's some discussion as far as equipment is concerned and the tree removal. But the you know, if I understood correctly, the HOA removes the trees, the city would come back in and we'll do a stabilization and we'll do the vegetation, whatever we need to stabilize the banks. Paul, am I pretty much correct on some of that or all of that or any of that?
Yes, sir. Assuming the board would like to proceed with it, our recommendation is to make the HOA 100% responsible for the tree removal, any easement acquisition needed for the tree removal, and we can do the regrading from the existing easements that are in place today. But you have that correct, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
I do, if no one else does. I'll wait.
I do have a couple of more comments, if that's all right. I just want to say that the HOA.
Let me go through with the alderman if
Yes,
I can.
I apologize.
Okay.
Any other alderman want to make a comment or have a question for Mr. Dixon?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Beth.
Go ahead, Alderman Burke.
Thank you. You know, this is such a frustrating issue here for us. I know this is not easy. It's not easy for any of us, but I've been in office almost 16 years now, and this was first brought to my attention around 2007 by Mr. Schmidt, who was the HOA president at the time. I'm not going to go into the whole history at all. We don't need that now, but I have watched a massive deterioration of this community. Mr. Dixon is right. One person has lost 10 to 12 feet of their backyard. And I do think there's a bit of a liability issue here. And this is not something that's created by this community. Now, granted, we have much stronger stormwater ordinances today than we had before. So subdivisions being built today are going to meet the stringent stormwater ordinances that we have, which we did not have back as much in those days. And so we have outside regional waters coming into this community at no fault of their own. And because we have these regional waters, this is what gave us the interest to take a look at this project. If it was an internal project, an internal issue, then I could see why the HOA should take care of it, but it is not. Paul, I think you said there are other projects around town. Another one is in my ward as well. That is got a problem, but it's not anywhere close to the issue that this has. And I would put up against probably any of the issues that we have out there with stormwater erosion, that this project is very, very high on the list. At least it should be. And I don't know how any HOA actually comes up with $100,000, let alone $400,000. That's just not going to happen in our community. I don't think that's realistic at all. And to even think that they're going to put $100,000 and take a loan out against those neighbors, I mean, that's significant. And I don't know where we would ever be able to partner with another HOA for $100,000. And by golly, I don't want to lose out on that $100,000, because at some point we're going to have to not continue to table this issue. We're going to have to address it. As I said, the stabilization, the erosion issue is not going away. Not taking the trees out is one thing, but Paul had mentioned it doesn't cure the problem. We have to go in and stabilize those banks. And then it is extremely important in this issue, with this problem, with this project, for the HOA to be involved, so they can work with their community members there to have the passage into behind their properties. And a lot of it can be done strictly in the creek bed areas. Again, I think all of those things come together. It's not just one issue or two issues or one reason or two reasons to do this. There's a plethora of reasons. This really does need to be addressed in a very timely manner, because all we've seen over the years is more deterioration. And again, this is not an internal issue. This is a regional issue with regional waters flowing into this area. And I would put this project up against any project in our city right now. Thank you.
Dixon, I'll give you 1 minute to finish up here, please.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to highlight again, and Alderman Berger is correct. The HOA doesn't have the funds to fund the removal of the trees. And I know we cannot, we would not qualify to get a loan for that much money to remove the trees. So again, after all the amount of time and effort that, I know that the city has already spent a considerable amount of money just on the planning that they've done for this project. So again, I implore the city to please consider moving this project forward and placing it on a priority list. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Alderman.
Thanks, Mr. Dixon. We'll now move on to items 3 and 4 and consider them together, which is a rezoning and a development plan for property located on Oak Meadow Drive and east of South Royal Oaks Boulevard, the Vintage at Watson Glen PUD subdivision, canceling the public hearing for July 14th, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The required public notice for this development did not go out. It was supposed to be sent out by the applicant prior to the May Planning Commission meeting. This was during their transition to working from home and the stopgap catch, which would have been me. When I looked at the public notice affidavit, it was there, but it was for the neighborhood meeting and not the FMPC. So I didn't catch it. So there was no intent on anybody to try and get by with something. It just was a mistake. So the public hearing that was going to be set for July the 14th needs to be canceled. And these two items need to be sent back, both the ordinance and the resolution, to the Planning Commission. Let them send out the proper public notice, and then we'll move forward again.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go to item 5. Resolution 2020-101, a resolution to award the construction contract for the Adaptive Signal Control Technology Project to Stansel Electric Company in the amount of $743,157.
We're excited to move this project forward. It's been on the books for a long time. A lot of planning has gone into it. Project is funded 80% by surface transportation funding, and the remaining 20% is local. And we're excited to finally move this project forward. Happy to answer any questions.
What's the timeline?
Good, good.
And I apologize, I don't have a timeline on me today. I'd have to check on that, but I can have Eric send that out to the group.
This item is on, Adam's on the line if you'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, I think we have a completion date in November for the construction portion, and then there's a software portion that goes probably, we have to avoid the holidays. So I think it'll get done in, well, we hope to get it done in between January and February of 2021.
Thank you, Adam.
Any other questions or comments?
This item is on both agendas tonight.
We'll keep moving on then. Item 6 is an ordinance to establish no parking restrictions on both sides of East Benjamin Drive from Liberty Hills Drive to Freedom Drive. And item 7 we'll consider at the same time, which is establish no parking restrictions on both sides of Freedom Drive from North Royal Oaks Boulevard to East Benjamin Drive.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. So just to cover this item, we had a petition from the
Paul,
HOA.
let me stop you just a second. I messed up. Were there any calls on items 3, 4, or 5, Mr. Stuckey?
Do we have any citizens on the line for our first few items, which related to the vintage at Watson Glen project and the Cool Springs East Jordan Branch restoration project and the adaptive signal? Nothing there, Mayor. I think Alderman Berger wanted to talk about direction on number 2.
And I'm going to backtrack just a second if I could. I didn't see Alderman Berger's note, but she was wanting some direction from the board as far as how to proceed on item 2. So I'll just run down the list real quick and ask you indicate how we should proceed with this. Alderman Barnhill, how would you like to proceed? Do you want further study or you have enough information?
I didn't hear any total money on the project, and it may have been in there someplace. I just missed it. If we're talking about the HOA spending $100,000 and the city spending whatever it is on that, I've got to go back and revisit that because that's not right now. I just don't see the funds being available. But you know, I would say if you want to look at it further, that's fine. But right now, I just can't support it.
Alderman Bransford.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the HOA will participate, but I think I hear 1.2 million for this total.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means that we will be responsible for 90% there. So is there any way, and I know the HOA is limited in their funding, so is there any way they could increase their percentage of that 1.2 million? That's where I would come down right now. But the main thing too is we cannot afford to wait on this project either. So we got to either, make this decision in the next, short time here to stop the erosion, stop the costs, whether it's we funding the majority of it or we are expecting more money from the HOA. So I would love to see a little bit more support from the HOA because there would be people down in other areas that will approach us with the same problem. But I was intrigued about the fact, Bev, that this was this also has regional water coming into that. So that gives me a little pause on maybe we need to take a higher percentage of this cost.
Alderman Martin, I skipped over you. I apologize. Do you want to move forward and study it a little more, or do you have an opinion at this time?
I do not mind being skipped over, but it would make sense to me ordinarily for the homeowners to take care of the trees and the city to take care of the stabilization. However, if that is not possible, then we might have to look at it. And I don't know if we have the money. They don't have the money, and we may not have the money to do it. I just don't know. At this point, I honestly don't know. I think we would need to look at our funding and see what is available on our end of it.
Alderman Speedy.
Yeah, I apologize for lacking video. I've been trying. Same thing as Alderman Barnhill and Ms. Martin have said. I'm just not sure if we got the funds available. I would see this as, since it was outside of the top 20, that if we got down to those opportunity projects and we had the funding available, great. Or we're just going to have to wait until we reprioritize the capital projects again the next time we do it.
Alderman Bland.
I am fine for looking at it a little bit deeper. And when I say that, I know we've looked at it to death, but I also know that we are realizing some substantial savings across the board as it comes to projects. I don't know if that's the same here. But I think that we've got people who have water coming into their houses. We've got, different situations. And while it's unfortunate to have your lot line reduced, I think we've got to prioritize, which is what we've done, for what needs to be fixed, in a timely manner. So if we could realize some more savings, maybe look at it a little bit deeper. But again, like everybody said, we are in a situation where what we had projected is not what we're going to really have. So it's hard to commit to one more project right now without knowing what we're going to be able to do we've already committed to. So look at it a little bit further, but I think we've got to be careful about pulling the trigger on anything.
I think I heard that they had bidded 3 times and nobody sent it out to bid 3 times and nobody ever bid on it. Alderman Peterson.
I don't really have anything to add to what's already been said. It's really tough, but I don't know whether the timing is here or not with the money.
Vice Mayor.
Well, I'm sure we could find the money, but that would necessarily push something else off of the list of things we're going to do or do on the timeline that we set. So unless we are all willing to identify the project or projects that we're not going to do, then I don't know that we should really be suddenly elevating this one up the list when it fell on the list where it fell when we all voted the first time.
Okay, we'll go back to items 6 and 7. I apologize for the interruption there.
Mayor?
So, Alderman Berger?
Yes, I would just like to finish those comments up with 3 things. It's sort of like putting that back on the list to kick other things off. Well, let's remember this project was up there. They were moving ahead. Our staff would never have gone out to bid to bring us a bid to vote on if it wasn't a priority. Then we got into redoing our priorities for the stormwater project. So just let me reiterate, that was there. We had already gone out to bid. And through no fault of our own and no fault of the HOA, we just couldn't get the bids at the time. Everybody and their brother was so busy with projects, and it was a huge project. So they were busy and it was a big project. Brandy brings up a good point. We are realizing some savings right now. Projects are coming in a little bit under our projections. So we might want to take a really good look at that. I would ask that Paul really take a good look at that and bring that back to us immediately because I would like to see if we could realize some savings. And the other thing is, the HOA has gotten the maxed out that anybody is even going to consider loaning an HOA. I mean, that's unheard of. HOAs just don't willy-nilly get out there and go to a lender and get permission to borrow $400,000. I mean, to get just over $100,000 is significant. Let me just remind you all of that. That's a significant major accomplishment by an HOA. And I frankly want to grab that $100,000 and don't want to lose it, because this is a project somewhere down the line we're going to have to do. And yeah, Brandy, I think you brought up the point that some people were getting water in their houses. Well, in this case, the houses are up higher than the water, but what they're getting into their homes are massive trees falling on their homes. It's one thing to lose a roof and to get a damaged house. It's another thing to have a massive tree go through your home and literally kill somebody sleeping in a bed at night, because we do have some pretty heavy duty storms here. So I just wanted to make those points again. And I can't say enough how critical this project is. And I just want to reiterate that information. And again, that it is regional waters coming into this area. And this should not be placed as a total burden on an HOA that really had absolutely no part in producing these waters. Thank you very much for the.
We'll send it back to CIC. We'll go back 6 and 7 now.
Mayor, one quick clarification as we talk about 6 and 7, which are both parking related. We have actually a minor typo in the two ordinances. It says 2019. They're actually 2020 should be the first prefix on those ordinances, just to be clear. As that moves forward, we'll make sure that's addressed.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so allow me to share my screen. And at this point, you should be able to see my screen. And so working with the HOA, we've had a request for parking restrictions. There were 4 parking restrictions that were requested. And I'm going to hit the one up here by Liberty Hills Drive. We're not discussing that one on the work session, but it is on the voting session for approval. And it was adjacent to 100% HOA property. It's no parking, and that one will proceed tonight. It was uncontroversial as far as moving that one forward. They also had a request on Chad Court. That one failed. They did not receive majority in favor. They only received 4 out of 8 votes, or 50%. So that one did not pass. The 2 that are being discussed today at work session is Freedom Drive and then East Benjamin Drive. They both barely passed. Freedom Drive passed 8 of 15, or 53%. And East Benjamin Drive passed 10 of 19 voters, or property owners voted in favor of 52%. The parking restrictions that they've asked for is related to safety in their eyes, and they've requested those hours to be restricted from 4 to 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. in both cases for items 6 and 7. Our concern from a staff level with it is that if it's truly safety, the parking restrictions should be permanent. We don't believe there to be a major safety issue, but the HOA board did vote to proceed with this, and it did receive the votes. The other concern we have is enforcement associated with these, as far as law enforcement having to do enforcement on them. And then lastly, the hours of 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. make it very difficult for people who are having certain type of events at their house later into the evening. The driveways can only accommodate so much parking. So we have notified Adam Mosier's on the line. I know we've notified the HOA multiple times to be here today. I don't know if they were able to log in on time or get onto the meeting, but hopefully someone's here to represent them, and I've not seen them if they are. But we're seeking your feedback, and staff didn't make a formal recommendation on it other than, you know, if it's a safety issue, it should be full-time. If it's not a safety issue, then these hours are just being requested by the HOA.
Stuckey, is anybody on the line?
Do we have anybody on the line to speak on the Liberty Hills parking restrictions, Freedom Drive and East Benjamin Drive? No one on the line, Mr. Mayor.
Any comments from the alderman?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Alderman Blanton.
I had the opportunity to call about, well, it was 3 friends specifically that live in Liberty Hills, and all 3 of those said they asked me to not vote for this. Interestingly enough, 2 of those have lived there for 25 years. So they know the neighborhood, they've been there a long time. They were also concerned that 51% or 53% does not it's not a landslide. In fact, one even went so far to ask if didn't we need to have 66%, and I didn't know how to answer that. So I just think that it would seem like it's just a personal request that someone is, trying to better their part of the road, but I don't think it is going to behoove the entire neighborhood, and it is not unanimous. It's not even close to that. So I will not be supporting this.
Anyone else want to speak to it?
Mayor, I do.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
This is exactly the kind of scenario that if we were to act on this next month, we would have the other half in here asking us what kind of idiots we were for having done this. This isn't, this doesn't strike me as something that there is any consensus or anything close to a consensus. And while I respect the right of the people to come in here and ask us to do this, I'm not going to change the status quo with 52%.
Alderman Berger, did you want to address this?
Yes, I did. I will just ditto Alderman Blanton and Alderman McClendon's comments. That's exactly what I was going to say. Plus, I just want to say that they had a first round of trying to get the signatures and could not get the signatures during the first round. So they went back out and spent a lot of time talking to the people just to get the signatures this time to just barely qualify. 51%, as Alderman Blanton said, and 53% is not an overwhelming number. And so because of this and various reasons, and eliminating parking in the evenings for people having functions at their home or guest over, I just cannot support this. But I do have a question for Paul. Paul or Adam, who was on here, do we have sufficient?
Hello, are you calling?
Do we have sufficient footage between the stop signs or the ends of the block in for no parking? It's usually 20 feet from an intersection that you cannot park a car, mainly for visibility. Do we have that in these situations? Because if not, I want to make sure that we would go over there and make sure that that's blocked off or lined off, because 20 feet, I think, is the designated footage, isn't it? Is that correct?
I don't know the exact footage, but I would say that, yes, we have sufficient site visibility in these locations. And should the HOA want to restrict it just at the intersection, that's a totally different request and accommodation, and something we would be more than happy to evaluate with them and move quickly on if that is perceived to be a problem. And Adam's on the line. If you've heard differently or know differently, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I believe it's 25 feet from the intersection, but at any rate, there is an existing no parking zone. If you look at Paul's screen there, moving back the dashed green line, there is a small no parking zone, for movements, safety wise, and, as it intersects North Royal Oaks or North Royal Oaks, right?
Yeah.
I've driven over there, and I'm aware that there is that does exist, but I wasn't sure it was the 20 or 25 feet required. So I would just ask that we look at that to make sure that the 20 or 25 feet that is required by our ordinance is there, just to be safe for visibility. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, we do have someone from the HOA on the line, and I'd ask them to introduce themselves, give their address, and give you a couple of minutes to make comments.
Okay, you're on for comment on the Liberty Hills parking restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Lisa Robertson. My name is Lisa Robertson.
Yeah,
I live at 833 West Benjamin Court.
Ms. Robertson, you might want to turn down the audio on your computer because we're getting some feedback there.
Okay, hang on a second.
Sure.
On. All right, is that better? Is that better?
I'm still getting some feedback, so I think it's better now. I think it's better now. Go ahead.
Well, I just shut Facebook off altogether. Now I can't see or hear anybody. But
Okay. Well, we can hear you, so go ahead.
Okay. My name is Lisa Robertson. I live at 833 West Benjamin Court. I am also on the HOA board. I'm calling about the parking, and I would like to make the comment. I think it was Mrs. Berger. Yes, it did take us 2 rounds to get our signatures. It also took us months to get our Airbnb passed because, number one, people don't answer the door. This was very difficult to do because people don't answer their door. We did not have any other way of contacting homeowners, either by phone or by email. If you look at the map, I live on West Benjamin, which is on the other side of East Benjamin. And I can tell you I've lived in this neighborhood for 16 years. And I crossed over Liberty to East Benjamin to go to the grocery store. And when there are many cars parked on the street, it is like playing, if y'all can remember Frogger, that's what it's like, where we have to stop on either side to avoid not getting hit. We have a speeding problem in this neighborhood, and the parking restriction, the people that we talk to, and I understand it's barely passing, but to me, you take that into that there are people that want this, and there are people who live on West Benjamin who can't vote because they don't live on East Benjamin that want this as well.
Thank you very much for your comments. I thought I heard another person chime in on the line. Do we have another citizen who wants to comment on the Liberty Hills parking restrictions? Okay, I apologize. I guess there's nobody else on there. Thank you.
Any other alderman want to make any comments?
Mr. Mayor, and
Alderman Peters.
okay, I did drive out there again in the last few days, and you know there are hills and everything there too, so it's really pretty difficult. But I think I remember someone mentioning that it's very tough for school buses and everything to get around in there, and so I guess maybe that was the reason that they had put those hours in, because I'm not sure if there are cars parked out there, how school buses could stop anywhere. However, I do understand that it is very complicated, and I would be very concerned with just a 52% and 53% wanting it.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would just make a quick comment that I had suggested, and you brought up that problem about the school buses and maybe difficult getting through there. Even with parking on both sides, you still can get a school bus through there. But I had recommended to them, if they were so concerned about this, that maybe they restrict only one side. That way, wouldn't be taking parking away from the entire street, and people would still have that available to them. And I do believe the parking was to be restricted what was the hour again? Was it 4? Restricting, limiting hours from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and then 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Restricting parking during those hours. But your school buses are coming down the street between 3 and 4, I believe. 3 to 4, 4:30. So I didn't get that. I didn't see why, after the school buses have already arrived, what help no parking would still be allowed during that time. So yeah, it's a little complicated, but I would definitely suggest to the HOA that if they consider this to be an ongoing problem, that maybe restrict it to one side. Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Martin.
I would agree with Alderman Berger. I think parking on one side would certainly help the situation, but the school buses, if they can get through, that's fine. But if it disturbs the neighbors, I just think parking on one side, I think you ought to have the parking there because that is a traffic calmer and it's used in other areas too as traffic calmers.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment on that subject?
Alderman Blanton.
I understand, Margaret, that it seems like it would make sense to do one side, but to me, the problem that you create there is you've got people who live on the side where it's parking allowed and people who live across, then you're vying for that space and it's creating problems within the neighbors because somebody may not want parking in front of their house and somebody may need parking in front of their house. And then if it's a problem now, it's because it's being used up. So I don't know how even one side of the street would fix the problem. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and I certainly understand that, and you may be exactly right.
Good point, Randy.
Anybody else?
Mayor, my one comment would be, have we ever had any problem with any of our sanitation trucks getting through there? And I guess I'm with Vice Mayor McClendon that I just see this being an enforcement nightmare to try to implement some of this parking. And I understand it's frustrating. I'm generally annoyed at the street parkers in my subdivision until I became one of those families that had 4 vehicles. So I apologize.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8, which is ordinance 2019-39 to create Title 12, Chapter 13 of the Franklin Municipal Code, establishing local rules applicable to construction, and to create Section 12-1301 relating construction work hours. And similarly, we'll consider item 9, which is an amendment to Title 12, Chapter 13 to create Section 12-1302 relating to construction site maintenance.
We have a group on here that I think will want to address this, walk you through. We'll probably take each of we'll walk through them together, but take each of these on terms of specifics. We've got Patrick Verrill, who's our Assistant Director in Building and Neighborhood Services, Tom Marsh, our Director, and I know Vernon Girth, our Assistant City Administrator for Community and Economic Development, has also been involved in this. But we think this will help clarify some expectations around construction hours and some practices around maintaining construction sites. So I think, I'm not sure who's kicking it off. I see Patrick on my screen. So whoever wants to of that group of 3, please take it away.
I'll jump in real quick. Good evening, everybody. And looking forward for Patrick and Tom to share these ordinance amendments. I will say that our Development Services Advisory Commission was established over a year ago. These were the first 2 issues that they tackled because we've had so many complaints from residents that had purchased new homes in developing neighborhoods. And Lynn Osland had worked on these, and unfortunately she passed away around the first of the year. But Patrick and Tom and the team have picked this up. also coincidental is that yesterday, several of you have received, may have received an email from a resident or two in the Echelon Lad Park area just about this exact thing. And these ordinance will make it much more efficient for us to hold the builders in these neighborhoods accountable, whether they're working on Saturdays, Sundays, late in the evening, early in the morning on holidays, or they're not maintaining their sites and allowing construction materials and debris to blow through the neighborhood. So take it away, Patrick.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and share that screen. Good evening. My name is Patrick Verrill, I'm the Assistant Director of Building Services. Thank you for allowing us to present these amendments for your consideration. With respect to the agenda being so full, I'll try to be mindful of your time. A little bit of background on this amendment is Franklin remains a highly desirable community. We continue to see strong development. Even despite the pandemic, we still have strong inspection rates. It is both encouraging and necessary to establish a regulation to maintain the expectation of tranquility for the public's best interest. The need to establish a recognized period of time, acceptable construction activity to occur. The previous established hours of construction, it should be noted, of activity remain the same. We're not changing any hours. However, this initiative provides an opportunity to address the complaints of the noncompliance and infractions in a timely manner. The city administrator reserves the authority to grant work authorizations that are outside of the set work hours. The second part of this proposal under 2019-39 is to define the level of construction activity that is enforceable under this ordinance. Combined efforts with city staff and Development Service Advisory Committee continue to respond to citizen complaints and concerns of noncompliance on varying levels. Ordinance 2019-39 establishes a structured set of requirements that will create an efficient means to address these infractions of noncompliance. Now, the objective would be to define the level of construction activity that's enforceable under this ordinance while determining the required compliance with the provisions under Title 11, Chapter 4 of the Franklin City Municipal Code. This ordinance will provide an opportunity to respond to noted infractions and repeated instances of noncompliance. We're happy to answer questions on this part of 39 so far.
Questions for Patrick?
I have some questions on timing. Okay, can you put that slide back up there? I think you had, I'm trying to get it back up on my computer and it's not coming up. Wait a minute, are you under, we don't have that presentation, I see.
Yes, ma'am. I just put the slide with the work hours back up.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I was trying to get that on my computer again, but I don't know why it's being stubborn.
Go ahead and make your comments. It's on your screen now.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So I have a question about the time. This Monday through Friday, 7 to 6, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then Saturday, 9 to 6 p.m. I don't see anything in here. There's two issues I have that I'd like to throw out there for a discussion. I don't see anything in here that counts for time change. We have daylight savings time still. So we have, to me, I think you can't, I wouldn't want to do this all year, but I was talking to Tom Marsh and we were talking about daylight savings time. And I said, wouldn't it be more reasonable to say that you would do 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, April 1st to October 31st during the time change where you have daylight hours and people are able to work. We have construction people, we have people earning money, doing jobs, trying to get jobs finished. And I really try to think about not impeding people's livelihood and their ability to do their jobs during those daylight hours, I think that are so important. So I'd like to see if other aldermen would be interested in moving that time to say 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. November 1st through March 31st, and then 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the daylight savings times. And I would say, because there are odd times like the end of March, I would just say April 1st to October 31st. The other thing I would say is that I don't understand why we would take off city holidays and require people, why construction work could not be done on city holidays, because people getting paid in the private sector shouldn't be beholden to our government work schedule. I find that a bit odd. I have no problem with holidays, because most people celebrate and are off on holidays, but city holidays sometimes don't always coincide with the private sector. Even though there's a holiday, a lot of the private sectors are still working on those holidays. Not talking about Christmas, I'm not talking about the major holidays, but there's a lot of holidays that coincide with us taking off. And so I would say that we just take off leave on Sundays, but take off city holidays, because I just don't think it's necessary. And if there is a violation during that time, who do they call? They call our police officers. Our police officers always respond to this. So they're on duty, they are there. So those would be my two comments on that.
Mr. Mayor, let me clarify that the term city holiday just is a defined term, and it does include things like Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, the typical traditional holidays. I think the only thing that might be a little unusual is we do have a holiday for Good Friday. Otherwise, city holidays reflects the mainstream holidays that you think of, and this is about how it might be impactful of neighbors around these. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the term city holidays, because we don't have special holidays that are out of the norm. So these are pretty typical, but we do have the ability to grant people the opportunity to work when they request those days as well. So you got to have something that defines the holidays, and that was an easier term for us because there's 10 specific days that are defined as holidays already, as city holidays. So if you want to approach it a different way, we can, but that was a kind of a shorthand.
So do you want, Eric, so instead of defining the holidays within that, within this new ordinance, do you want to just leave it where they can just come and get permission from you? Would that be better?
That's kind of how it works now. Like I said, the city holidays is a pretty, a fairly, it's not a huge list. And then we work with any exceptions if people want to work on one of those days. And we typically work with them to do that. But it does provide you with a standard baseline of the core holidays that most people are off on. So
all right, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it does a pretty good job, and we work with where people need that flexibility.
They're able to come and ask you. The other thing I would like to see if any other aldermen had a comment on, because I think we ought to forsake that extra daylight hour. I mean, we have actually an hour and a half more. If you stop at 7, you still got an hour and a half of daylight, but 7 o'clock gives workers an opportunity to finish up jobs when we do have lighter hours.
Mayor.
Alderman Martin.
My thought on that, Alderman Berger, is that, sometimes they just maybe need to get off at 7 o'clock, because if they're in a neighborhood, the neighbors want that to stop at 7. There's noise, there's a lot of, they have to clean up. So, they're still there most of the time cleaning up and doing whatever it is they do. I've been by several construction areas, and they are doing things that during that period. But I think we ought to leave it at 7 because that's for the neighbors too. That's not just for the workers. And maybe they need to rest a little bit. So I would not be necessarily in favor of changing that time.
Margaret, that is 6 o'clock, not 7, but can I ask, do we distinguish between residential and commercial? Because commercial would be a whole different story to me than residential. I agree with you on that, Margaret, for residential, but I would not agree on it for commercial. That is not even within the areas of residential.
If I may, could I highlight a very important part of this ordinance, and then maybe Patrick and Tom could elaborate too, Mayor?
Absolutely, Mr.
The reason, one of the things that we're doing with this ordinance is actually allowing more hours of construction. And because if you look under the exemptions, greenfield development and unoccupied buildings that are located greater than 1,000 feet from a residentially occupied property, this ordinance doesn't apply to. So they can work Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, all night long as they're 1,000 feet or more from a residentially occupied property. The other part of this, and you may remember Joanne Wilhite came to a work session. Our police officers have a lot on their plate, and we had brought this forth because that's really not a good use of their time to monitor when people come to work or leave a job site. So this ordinance actually creates more time, but it does provide the same structure when a property owner is within a residentially occupied unit is within 1,000 feet of a construction site, whether it's commercial or residential. So I think that's one of the very important elements of this, that in greenfield development, contractors can really go to town on developing the site. It's when people are living in their homes, have made an investment, that they want to have some certainty of hours of peace and quiet.
How does that work with mixed use?
If there's a residential unit within 1,000 feet, they have to adhere to these hours like they do today. No change.
Do we want to continue on to the site maintenance?
All right, I've moved on. Go ahead, Patrick, if you're ready. I went ahead and moved on to the next slide in the presentation about site maintenance.
Okay. As I mentioned previously, Franklin is very blessed in the level of development and investment in this city. Unfortunately, all too often, there's a negative to so much success. During construction, the impact development has on both the immediate surroundings as well as the long-term environmental damage is often overlooked by those especially who are doing the development. Now, the objective on this would be is to establish a minimum standard and regulation in order to safeguard life, health, and property for the public welfare and the environmental impact. Establish a point of contact determining who exactly would be accountable for the day-to-day conditions of the work site and the level of compliance, including erosion control measures and any other stipulations put forth by engineering, planning, and the infrastructure. Maintain a level of compliance enforceable through citation and progressive administrative action as needed. Currently, this is handled in a more of a spot check manner. It could be applied across the board in a regimented and more of a efficient way to be everyone is treated the same. There will be no issues of non-compliance that is overlooked or compliance that is too severely administered. City staff currently responds to the complaints received addressing affected areas associated with the construction sites. This ordinance would serve to codify the combined efforts of both city staff and the input received from the Development Service Advisory Committee. Now, this first set of photos were taken of multiple construction sites at different locations and neighborhoods. They demonstrate a dramatic effect of a need to have additional administrative response to the varying levels of noncompliance. As you can see from the picture on the left, there's excess construction materials. We have concrete washout that has overflowed the erosion control out into the street. We have a parking issue. On the right picture, you see debris that's generated from workers and construction. Now, the second set of photos illustrates the overflow effect on both adjacent properties and surrounding environmental impact of noncompliance, which it creates for the adjoining properties. On the picture on the right, the far right, you can see those are actually occupied homes that have to endure the trash blowing onto their property, or having construction vehicles that are left out or running and creating a track out onto the road. As you can see, the gravel spilling out. Now, this last set of photos are representative of a residential project of multiple locations, showing compliance through direction from city staff and to maintain a safe construction site that's both compliant and details of this ordinance. The house on the photo on the left, you can see it is preoccupied. It's next door to another set of homes that have already been purchased with people living in them. The center section is actually a string of townhomes that are going up in the middle of unoccupied area. And the last photo on the far right is across the street from occupied homes, and these are homes of varying levels of production. I thank you for giving this opportunity to explain our amendments, and be happy to answer any questions or concerns in regards to this proposal.
I'd just like to make a quick comment that this did come from our Development Services Advisory Committee, and I think they've been working on this with staff for over a year. And if you remember, this is a group of professionals with lots of construction and development experience, having worked all over the United States. So I think this is really good work coming from some outside folks that are giving us some new ideas and some new concepts.
Mayor,
Alderman Martin.
I'm delighted to see this, because I have gotten many complaints about the appearance of these construction areas, the danger of them, and there are some developers and workers who are very careful about picking up and not leaving their trash out to blow around it. I'm delighted to see this, and I want to thank you all for giving this some of your time and attention.
Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Then I'll come back to Alderman Berger if nobody else wants to make a comment. I do want to make sure we have plenty of time for item 14. Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
I just see one thing that was left out here, and maybe I've missed it, so would you point it out if I have? But one problem that we do have with these sites is overgrowing grass and weeds. And I don't see anything that specifies the cutting of grass and weeds around the area as well. We're dealing with the trash, we're dealing with the construction materials, but too many times I see that they neglect to mow or clip down or weed eat the large weeds and grass that accumulate, and it looks pretty bad. So could you address that? And if it's not in here, can we add it, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'll chime in on that. We typically feel that that's addressed with our typical, property maintenance code enforcement activities. I will actually take a look back through the text of 2019-40 and see if there's a place that would make sense to call that out specifically for the construction sites also.
Yeah, I'd like to add it because it has been neglected through the years. And it's tough. I think it needs to be included in this because we are specifically addressing the construction. Thanks, Tom.
Hey, we did have this difficult time of communication. We did have one other caller come in on the parking in Liberty Hills. So I'd like to give them 2 minutes to make their comments to make sure we get it into the record.
Yes, we have a citizen on the line. I wanted to speak to the proposed parking restrictions for Liberty Hills neighborhood. Sir, you can just give us your name and we'll give you a couple minutes to make your comments. Are you there? Do we still have the caller on the line? I guess he dropped off.
Okay, well, if he comes back on, just let me know. Is it okay to move to item 10? Item 10 is City of Franklin Contract 2020-0076 with Community Housing Partnership of Williamson County for home rehabilitation assistance for low to moderate income residents. The City of Franklin, this is CDBG money, is my understanding. Any comments or questions about it? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 11, which is a draft procurement award to ADS LLC, doing business as ADS Environmental Services of Huntsville, Alabama. Total amount of $488,220 for 1 to 3 years for wastewater flow monitoring services for the Wastewater General Division of Water Management Department. Any comments, questions? Item number 12, Resolution 2020-106, a resolution declaring an existing section of the City of Franklin right-of-way known as Old Charlotte Pike, generally located between the new northwest section of the McHatcher Parkway extension and Carlisle Lane as surplus and to be maintained in its current configuration as a private public access utility and drainage easement.
This is the segment of Old Charlotte by Franklin Christian Academy. They will take over maintenance of that, but also preserve it as a public access easement so folks can access the new trailhead that will be part of the multi-use trail along the McHatcher extension that's under construction right now. But this has been something we talked to the adjacent property owners as well. And this should be a good way forward as Franklin Christian Academy continues to develop as well.
Okay, and seeing no comments, we'll move to item 13, which is order number 12 to the City of Franklin contract number 2018-0259 with Southland Constructors for the addition of 45 days in regards to weather delayed days for the Fire Station 7 in the amount of $42,000.
Eric, to the board, it's been a terribly wet season. It's been great for farmers, but it's been terrible for construction people. This project is moving along. The construction company has done, Southland Constructors, I feel like has done an outstanding job at keeping the crews busy. They have worked many Saturdays and Sundays out there to try to get this project back on schedule. I appreciate your time.
Any comments? Are there anybody on the line for it, Mr. Stuckey?
Anyone on the line for the change order for Fire Station 7 or the two items before that that related to construction regulations, both hours of construction and site maintenance? Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to item 14, which is resolution 2020-108, a resolution authorizing city staff to commence contract negotiations with OHM Advisors / Studio 8 Design for professional services related to the design of the new City of Franklin City Hall.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple comments to start off, and I have Vernon Girth make a couple comments as well here. This is really, we're taking it step by step. When we reviewed capital projects a couple meetings ago, The new City Hall is one of those projects that fall in your top 10 priority list. And it's one we identified as taking to the next step, meaning we would proceed with additional design work and start working through that, but also build it in such a way that we take it step by step and get board approval as we move through that process. We did go through an extensive review, had a very competitive request for proposals for design services, professional services related to the project, and had really excellent firms come forward, and our staff team had a consensus around the OHM Advisors Studio 8 design team as the best match for this work. I will say it's a complicated project. There's a lot to it. And because of that, that's why staff is bringing forward this idea to get your approval to go into negotiations. And then we'll bring back to you, I would guess, probably in one of the August meetings, a specific contract with the professional services group. And then you'll be able to vote on that. We plan to structure that in phases. So there are different components, and you can see those each step along the way and give us guidance about moving on to the next step as we move towards this project. But I do believe as a high priority project and an important project for us long term, that we've got to start chipping away at these elements. And it can't be permanently a project that's 5 or 6 years out on the horizon. We've got to move it forward and bring these elements. But we do understand the situation we're in with capital projects, that we need to keep checking in and making sure we're comfortable as we take it step by step as we move forward. I'll invite Vernon, who's kind of helped coordinate and facilitate this process, talk a little more about where we are in this process now. Vernon?
Thank you, Eric. And this is indeed exciting for all of us in the city, but I want to overemphasize that the intention here, and this is the beginning of that, is to make sure you, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, are engaged along the way. And it's vitally important, especially now, because of what's happening with COVID-19 and the economy. And what we're asking for here is to proceed into contract negotiations with a professional services agreement with OHM Advisors and Studio 8, which was selected from the 16 firms and multiple interviews, to proceed with the process of redeveloping this site. And we're going to include in that professional services agreement that we bring back to you in August, hopefully, September at the latest, a number of milestones so that we aren't going and proceeding any further than you want us to and that the economy allows us to with our budgetary constraints and concerns. So we want to provide you that assurance and asking your permission to proceed into these negotiations, understanding we'll bring that professional services agreement back and have a little bit further discussion on the scope and the schedule. Thank you.
I think we'll just go down the list and let everybody make a comment. We'll start with Alderman Barnhill.
I have several comments or concerns, whichever way you want to look at them. When we go back to the capital improvements budget, it shows $1,200,000 and something thousand in the 21 budget. Am I correct on that? Anyone? Eric, you, Vernon?
We were not planning to spend $120 million in the fiscal
No,
$1,200,000 might have been the total of projects that have some level of funding in the fiscal year. I'm not sure what that number refers to.
Oh, okay, let me ask you this then. Are you planning on spending $1,200,000 on the new City Hall between now and June 30th of 2021? That's in the budget, right?
I think that is what was said. I don't know that number is accurate. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Well, it's coming off of the list that I have that says, and it shows there's variable steps through that.
He's telling me no. So I'm not sure if we're looking at the same thing.
Okay.
That's what we would bring forward to you in terms of the contract and the phasing. And you could look at the specifics as opposed to what might have been an estimate earlier in the process. So I think you'd get a more specific answer on that when you get there. I know collectively within the fiscal 21 budget, we identified about $680,000 of total cash expenditure towards capital projects. So this might be in that mix. The other thing to realize is you have the opportunity to identify projects that would be eligible for bond funding down the line, so you could reimburse yourself back that cash if you should so choose. So you've got some options on this and other projects in terms of whether you use cash, where you allocate bond proceeds, et cetera.
It says it comes from cash proceeds or whatever. Now, does that mean that it comes from the $70 million due budget that we are funding this out of, or are we funding it in some other manner?
Alderman Barnhill, let me let Michael Walters Young.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the board. The funding in the budget is as follows. So in the general fund budget, that's $70 million. There's $2.2 million roughly that is cash. That's $125,000 for breathing apparatus in the fire department, and that's $2.1 million in TOC for various projects, signal timing and traffic and intersection improvements. Of that 2.1 million in TOC, that's 80% funded through grants, which and only 20% through cash. So when Eric says that $600,000 roughly is of the amount coming from reserves in the budget is going to capital, it's going to our match for the TOC projects, and it's going for the fire department breathing apparatus. The $1.2 million figure does come from the schedule that we issued several meetings ago regarding how much money we thought we could spend with City Hall in terms of design and efforts in fiscal 21, but that is currently not budgeted in the fiscal 21 budget. I hope that helps clarify those numbers.
So you're saying that 1.2 million is just a number out there with nowhere to go get the money to be able to back up that 1.2 million?
Well, if you choose to move forward, and if we go spend 1.2 million, we have identified that that would need to come from additional general fund cash. But it is currently not budgeted within the fiscal 21 budget. Because City Hall is a general obligation project, if you will, the other funding sources that we use to fund capital related projects, such as parkland dedication to road impact or city facilities, aren't eligible to be used for it. So therefore, staff as finance, we've identified that it would need to come from general fund cash, or could later then be reimbursed via an intent resolution for a future bond issuance.
Okay, one more question, and I may then have a question too afterwards. The 1.2 million is there for a purpose. Possibly we could spend it, but we don't have the money to spend unless we go, and I'm going to ask you specifically, unless we go to reserves again to pull another 1.2 besides the 2.8 we're pulling. Is that correct?
That would be a correct statement.
That's a partially correct statement, because you still have the option to reimburse yourself for bond proceeds down the line. So what you need to look at with any of these projects, not just City Hall, is you have a blend of funding. You have cash on hand versus you also have debt funding. So when you look at each project, you got to look at that blend. And I think in this project, we could talk about how that's what's identified as debt, what's identified as cash. It's a matter of timing. And again, as we identified for you a couple meetings ago, there are projects that we put in green that were green lights that we move forward through construction because they're so far along. There are projects that we highlighted as yellow, meaning we'll take it to a next step. We'll go check in kind of phase by phase with the board about funding and what makes sense to do. That's where City Hall is. And then we had a group in red that we said, we're going to defer these projects for the time being. So this is an example of taking that next step. You're not even committing to a funding yet. We'll give you a phasing, and with that can probably give you a better sense of where those dollars might lie with each phase and what the estimated timing is with those. And that may give you something more specific to respond to and make a decision on.
One final comment, Mayor. Even if we do reimburse ourselves through bonds or bond sales or something other, don't we have to pay those back?
Of course.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether you get it from reserves or whether you get it from bond sales. Regardless, somewhere along the way, you have to pay that money back. You have to account for being able to pay for that money that you've borrowed or that you've taken out of fund balance. I'm through, Mayor.
Alderman Martin.
I'm delighted to see that we're moving forward on this. We could drag our feet, and 25 years from now, we'll still be sitting down there with water leaking in the building. I'm delighted we're moving forward, and I certainly am going to support this. And I thank you for what you have accomplished, Vernon, and you and your staff. And thank you so much.
Alderman Bransford.
I'm in support of moving forward, and particularly if we're not committing any funds at this time. We're creating a maybe the process of how the process will go. So if that's what we're doing with this phase here without committing dollars, because as you know, we got so many worthy causes out there that we can be spending that money on. So let's make sure that we can get a structure. And if this is what we're going to get in over the next few months, is a structure of what that would look like and what that funding should be or could be, because hopefully there is some outside partnership money that we can entertain on a project such as this.
Alderman Speedy.
Not much more to add other than support moving forward with the contract negotiations.
Alderman Berger.
A ditto to what Scott just said. I'm good with that.
Alderman Blunt.
I'm fine with going on a fact-finding mission. I think that there's some opportunities that we've always talked about in the past of a public-private partnership that would dissipate our responsibility fiscally and maybe even make the project go a little bit faster. But I definitely want to go on record to saying that we've been putting lipstick on a pig for many years with City Hall. And I think because of where we are as a nation and the other things that we have had to push pause on that affect our employees, our citizens, that I would rather see us rent a tube of lipstick than take money away from worthy projects. But I know that's not what we're doing. I just need to say that I'm going to be really careful about how we spend money going down the road when there's other things that really need to be handled first.
And this was in the top 10 projects, if I remember, that the board ranked. So Alderman Peterson.
So much of what Alderman Barnhill said expresses my concerns also. It is different now than from the time whenever we first made our project list.
And finally, Vice Mayor.
I'm going to be the wet blanket. We got a lot of hard choices coming. We're not nearly out from under the hard choices. I agree that City Hall needs, this is a worthy project and it ranked in the top of our project list for a reason. However, committing this kind of money to this particular project in the midst of what we are doing and with the difficult decisions that we have coming is not a good look. And so I'm more inclined to say, let's push pause on this for the moment and see how things shake out and stabilize. And the minute that I feel comfortable that we have a better sense of where things are going, I'll put this right back up on the list and say go. But for right now, I just have misgivings about committing this kind of resources to this particular project.
Well, I feel like I need to weigh in on this a little bit also. I think that, you know, I'm in this building more as much as anybody, and I see that it needs a tremendous amount of maintenance constantly, and it's outlived its usefulness. I think this project is going to be a very complicated project, number one, because of where the building is located. I think there's a lot of infrastructure issues that are going to have to be addressed. And I think it's important for us to start some type of staged planning on how we're going to move this forward. To me, the first step in starting some staged planning is to negotiate with the identified vendors and see what that contract looks like and what the scope of the contract would be. And then each time bring something forward for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to weigh in on. I can't disagree that these are challenging times in regards to finances. We've been known for being good managers of the taxpayer dollar and being responsible, and certainly will continue to do that. So I think what we'll do now is adjourn this meeting and then get ready for the next one, unless there's some burning issue that somebody needs to speak to before we shut this meeting down.
Mr. Mayor, I would just say one thing, that it's sort of ironic that we had the same issue in 2008. We were getting ready in 2007, 2008, if you remember. And then the recession came and we pulled the plug on it. So here we are back again, and then the other shoe dropped just recently. But I didn't want to say much because I agree with most everything that everyone was bringing up, the different points. But, you know, it's tough to keep throwing good money away every year, every month, every week to repair and to put into City Hall. So it's a tough thing. But I think the planning, the negotiating, and looking at public-private partnerships is going to be critical for us.
Okay, this meeting's over, and we will come back in about 15 minutes, and heads up to the board that we will have an executive session tonight. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So no executive session. So we'll see you in just a few minutes.